What's up, chat? Welcome back to another Out of Spec Bits episode. Just a quick episode on exploring the 10 to 80 charging time of this monstrosity, the Cadillac Escalade IQ, and talking about some of the nuances with what actually allows for proper charging with this thing. But here's a few challenges. Software is a little challenging, I think, with some of the legacy automakers. Tesla, Rivian, I think Lucid as well, make it very easy to go into the car, see the settings, and see if you are on the latest software or not. This thing seems to be a bit more challenging. I've been talking to my friend Mike. We've had him on the channel before. He recently sold his Rivian, bought an Escalade IQ. He seems to love it. It's awesome. But he actually, I guess, got a recent software update, I think at the dealer maybe, which then allows for full-blown charging even with AC running. Because when the AC is ripping with GM vehicles, it seems to derate charging performance drastically. That's what I've seen in my experience. Recent 10% challenge versus charging test with the Blazer EV SS confirmed this. And the 10% challenge I just did with this also, I think, confirmed it. 15 minutes of charging, ripped at 362 kilowatts, and then ramped down gradually to like 130 something kilowatts at 37% when I unplugged. That's not good. But with the 10% challenge, we actually run climate while charging because that's emulating a road trip. In comparison, when we do charging tests, such as this 10 to 80 test I'm doing right now, that's actually done without climate. And that's where GM cars seem to charge actually pretty well. So it is crazy how much climate control can have an impact. Sometimes drastically, sometimes just a little bit of derating. So, gonna see what happens with this. I'm gonna test this 10 to 80% time. Of course, I didn't do a 10 to 80 with climate before because it was just a 10% challenge, so it's only 15 minutes of charging. But we'll see what 15 minutes of charging gets with this, and then we'll see the whole time of 10 to 80. It's just gonna be a quick experiment, but I'm taking you guys along for the ride. Before we jump into this, you guys should know that conveniently, just a couple days after I did this test, Alpitronic/Mercedes-Benz installed cable cooling on these chargers. Now, according to them, that wouldn't actually make a difference. According to their data, the chargers were able to give the car everything the car was requesting. The session appears to be within the margin of error, close to sessions of the 24 module battery pack with oil-cooled cables that they've seen previously. That being said, still hoping to do some more testing at some point, more 24 module testing. So any Escalade IQ owners, Hummer EV, big trucks. This, by the way, is the $160,000 luxury 2 trim of the Cadillac Escalade IQ, complete with automatic opening doors, executive rear seating, something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screens. They say the front screen's 55 inches edge to edge. It's not really. It's 2 separate screens, but that's, hey, marketing jargon for you guys. Yeah, this thing is really freaking sick. It's baller, 40 speaker AKG system, massage, heating, cooling in all 4 seats. I say all 4. There are 2 rear seats, but they're hilariously, they're fine, but like for a vehicle of this size, you expect them to be crazy huge. But let's check the session here. I just want to see how we're cooking. 363 kilowatts at 20%. That's still really ripping. I think this is already going better than the 10% challenge that I just did, which is accurate, I would say. So, done just about 4 minutes of charging, 26 kilowatt hours, dumping the energy in. These are new Alpitronic units, by the way, here in Colorado. I think we're in Thornton. Mercedes branded, super sick install. I've been talking to our friends Brandon, Sebastian, who have worked on this site, and yeah, not liquid cooled cables. Apparently they don't even need to be because they're not going to be stressed that much. And the 2 chargers on the end, dedicated 400 kilowatt no matter what, because you only have 1 cable. The other chargers here, 4 other chargers, each one with 2 cables. So you can have 400 kilowatts, but you may end up splitting if someone plugs in next to you, which would just be rude, I would say. But really cool install, really awesome to see it here. Perfect for 10% challenges. So I'll be using this hopefully regularly in the future. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this looks like moving forwards here. The graph, oh, it's just a straight line. Let's see how long we can hold that and how high it climbs. As pack voltage rises, we should be able to see this number become astronomical. GM's interestingly conservative with their quoted rating. So they say this 24 module battery pack is like 205 kilowatt hours. It is huge. It weighs almost 3,000 pounds, by the way, just the battery. They say 205 kilowatt hours. We've actually pulled like 215 plus out of it. So they may be a bit conservative with that. Even range, this thing has an EPA range of 460 miles. Tom Malogny has recently blown past that and even did a bit lower speed test where he got 600 miles. It is just a range beast. The coupe back slopey roof does help with that. And we do have the Escalade IQL coming out next year. And that's gonna be where they change the range figures just a little bit because I think they realized they were a bit conservative with this. So this EPA will go to 365 and the IQL will come out with 465, then the IQL will come out with 460 miles. Only a 5 mile difference for a much more aggressive square back. That's pretty wild to me. That's pretty impressive. I mean, this thing alleviates range anxiety for sure, but at the expense of insane battery pack. And well, this thing entirely weighs like 9,300 pounds, which is ridiculous. Still charging at full rip, and we're actually coming off of peak now, right about 34%. So we were able to hold nearly peak power for a solid fourth of the battery. Already dumped in 60 kilowatt hours, and it's only been, how much time are we at? Under 10 minutes. Holy cow. So we're definitely gonna blow past our 10% challenge time. That's not surprising because that's been my experience with GM stuff. This, by the way, I've checked and it says it has the latest software updates. So if there is another special software update the dealership has to install, that's not an ideal situation for a customer, that's for sure. Okay, I've been seeing it climb down from like 340 all the way down to 295 in real time, right about 36%. We've already dumped in the same amount of energy we had for the 10% challenge in 15 minutes, but this has only been around 10 minutes. I hate how fast these screens reset, by the way. So that's pretty crazy. We'll check as soon as it hits 15 minutes to see how much more energy we've added than in the 10% challenge, because that'll be really interesting. At this time, 37% in the 10% challenge, we were down to 139 kilowatts. So it's ripping at over double the speed just by not using AC. By the way, 85 degrees now, ambient temperature out here. It was 75 when I did the 10% challenge earlier. So that gave it even more of leverage to have a better charging session earlier. Holy crap. I know I've said this in multiple videos, but I can't believe a $160,000 car has this like little horrible dangly thing, whereas like much cheaper German cars have a very nice fancy flap that opens up. They even went as far as to give you an electric charge port cover, but then this, oh my God, ugh, I don't even want to touch that. Let's double check here. Just kind of taking you guys along for the ride. Already 40%, still ripping pretty high up, high 200 kilowatts. Wow. Yeah, we still have 2.5 minutes before our 15-minute mark, and we've blown past 10% challenge numbers. This is pretty wild to me. Boom, there we go, 15 minutes, and we're at 44%. That's an extra, 45%. That's an extra almost 8%, nearly 20 kilowatt hours added than what we had in the 10% challenge, which means we could have gone another 30 or 40 miles, something like that. Yeah, close to 40 miles, probably 30-ish, 35, something like that. Either way, that would have been a 35% increase on what it was able to do. That's really crazy to me. We're also still here at 170 kilowatts. We have yet to dip down to where we were before. So I'm hoping to check the logs in the charger to see if it still truly is not derating due to heat, because I'm surprised that these are not, water cooled or liquid cooled cables. I feel like they should need that to really pump in the juice, but maybe not. What do I know about DC fast charging? So that's fascinating to me. We'll see how long it takes to get to a full 80%. And I'm curious, hopefully we can do another test at some point, or maybe borrow someone else's Escalade IQ to do a 10 to 80 on like an EA charger to show the difference. Holy cow, we have hit severe derate down, not even up to 50%, and it's charging at 87 kilowatts. That's worse than a Model 3. And on a battery this size, that's a very, very poor C rate. Looking at this graph, look at that precipitous drop off here. Holy crap. was awesome up to here. Then we had a bit of a dip that like lined up again. Seemed like it was on the rise, but then it's dropped way back down. So I'm guessing that could be a combo of ambient temperature. The car maybe has derated at this point, but with no climate running, it's doing as best as it can, as far as I can tell. All right, for the sake of science, time to do a little stop. It dipped, but then it's going back up a little bit. I'm gonna stop charging. We're gonna switch to another charger that probably has a cooler cable, and we'll see if that makes a difference, because I wanna see not just like this is already not gonna be an accurate 10 to 80 time. So I wanna see just how much of an effect that has. But look, it's doing a climb back up. Let's see if jumping to another charger results in much higher speeds, because right now we're settled in around 100 kilowatts. It is climbing a little bit. Maybe I'll give it a little bit more here just to see what it climbs up to. But fans are ripping in the charger itself. The car's fans are also ripping, so it's probably doing full beans to actually cool off this thing. So this is all really fascinating stuff. All right, so we got, oh, just bumped my head on the cable. We got 53% at the other one. We are now starting another charger, another cable, a cooler cable that was in the shade mostly, just to see if it makes a difference. We were at 125 kilowatts at that charger right there as we finished. 104 kilowatt hours dumped into this thing. That was pretty impressive. And actually, let's see, what was the time? 26 minutes. Already blasting way past 154 kilowatts. We'll see if it holds it though. Sometimes if you unplug and plug back in, it'll like speed back up for a little bit, but then remember that it's like hot and then it will ramp back down. So we'll have to see if this ramps right back down to where we left off at 125-ish kilowatts. I would love to see an industry shift of the cars being forced to show you exactly what's happening with the charging. Like if it's derating, first of all, so many people wouldn't even know how to tell if it's derating. But the car should be like, hey, the charge speed is less because your climate's on. The charge speed is less because the charger is not giving us everything we're requesting. Or the charge speed is less because the car is overheating. The charger can actually accept full power. Or while your charge speed was just cut drastically, maybe check and see if someone plugged in and is now sharing power with you. I don't know if that's like a real viable solution, but that'd be pretty cool. Some cars do show you, but it'd be cool if every car showed us. So session, 163 kilowatts, holding strong. I'm inclined to think the cable was over there possibly heating up a bit. So after talking to the folks behind this infrastructure, it seems that it was not, we don't think it was cable derating, it wasn't charger derating at all. It was the actual vehicle, the Escalade, requesting less amperage from the charger. The charger's like, I can still give you everything you want, and the car's like, whoa, throttle it back. And then somehow, me taking 10 seconds to move chargers caused the car to be like, actually, I can take more power. Really interesting strategy. I don't know how the sensors or thermal limits of the car are handling that. I wonder if the same thing would have happened if I just plugged back into the same charger. That'd be really interesting. I could spend a week charge testing this car, various chargers, etc. Because also what's interesting is it may have throttled back so much because the car just took in so much energy at really high rate that it kind of overdid it. Whereas if I had plugged into, say, a 300 kilowatt peak charger, it probably could have held that longer. We've seen the same stuff with Taycans as well as Lucid. In fact, I think the best charging session ever on a Taycan was on a 300 kilowatt charger, even though it can take more juice. Because the way the thermal management strategy of these cars go is that just, you know, it's kind of an average of the curve in a way. Not totally average, but like if you charge like crazy down low, it'll put so much heat into the pack that it has to then pull it back to bring it back up to normal operating temperature to take more juice. Whereas if you have not 100% charging rate, but maybe like 75% of its peak, it can hold that longer because you're putting less stress on it. All of that makes sense. It's kind of like doing track times with a car. I mean, if you're running at like 10 tenths on a track and you start overheating, even just throttling back to 9 tenths might help a lot. At least that's what speaks to me about this type of curve right here, where it's slowly rising all the way up 185 kilowatt, 187 kilowatts at 71%. Really, really good. That to me speaks of the battery kind of cooling down to take more juice. Cool. Thermals. And when you have a 200 plus kilowatt hour battery pack, that's a lot of thermal to deal with. It is truly so hot out here. So I can't blame the car for overheating, honestly, but it's just a bummer that you can't run AC while charging, because that would be so nice right now. But maybe with an update, some phantom update. I gotta look into that more. All right, just wrapped up here. 168 kilowatt hours total, 48 minutes total charge time. That's pretty wild. Still 172 kilowatts at this point. So we definitely ramped back up, but then ramped back down a little bit. So that's, I'm gonna review the charging logs and get more info for you guys. But I gotta rush and get this car back to the folks that we're borrowing it from, just to make sure they can get it to the next team who needs it. So that's it for the charger section. All right, well, I just reviewed the curves and the logs from the charging session, which I'll put like right up here or something. Yeah, really, that just shows and proves that like the charger was really giving everything the car was asking for. So the car was actually the limiting factor in this case, at least according to the charging equipment and the sensors inside the Alpitronic unit. So with that being said, yeah, it's just a little confusing on how GM does their charging strategy. On one hand, it's not exclusive in the way it operates, where, you know, if you have a car that peaks at say 300 and like, let's say this thing hit 375 kilowatts in the session, that'd be a really cool peak number, impressive. But that is so much stress early on that it'll then derate faster to accommodate for that early thermal performance. Whereas if I had pulled up to, let's say, a 250 kilowatt charger or 300 kilowatt charger and just held that, but never peaked way up where it could have theoretically been in a higher power charger, that total stress is just less for it to worry about. So it can hold that number longer because it's not doing, I've already explained this extensively in this video. I just wanted to drive the point home at the end of, yeah, GM strategy, still heavily affected by AC being on. Like the climate, the coolant loops system is kind of shared between the cabin and the battery, and the cabin is always prioritized. So it'll really restrict the cooling that can happen with the battery if you're running climate. I've heard maybe there's updates that can improve that. We'll let you guys know if we hear anything else in that regard. But if it's an update that has to be installed at the dealer, that's not a cool experience. That doesn't feel premium to me. When you have all these other cars like Lucid and Rivian and Tesla that can do updates on the fly to address all sorts of things like this. I mean, Rivian just recently updated their charging curve to be really awesome over the air. So hopefully GM charging can improve. This thing's still a beast. The Cadillac Escalade is just baller, technical term. But yeah, that's my experience kind of doing a 10 to 80. It was fascinating to see it switching from charger to charger, resulting in an immediate spike of going back up to 160 kilowatts when I unplugged at 130. It still could have possibly been the cable being hot, and maybe the charger just didn't have the sensor in the right place to where it thought further down the line that it would be the car. But I think they have enough sensors. They're pretty confident. Alpitronic themselves and Mercedes, they're confident that it's not them. So I don't know, GM, if you're looking and you can check the logs for this charging session, let me know. Let's have a fight. No, just kidding. Let's keep it civil. But yeah, that's fascinating stuff. I mean, 46 minutes, 10 to 80, not amazing. Could have done a lot better, I think, if thermals were more on our side. But hey, that's just how it goes, charging a giant battery. But then again, that's a lot of range. I mean, 460 miles on a full tank, probably conservatively speaking, pretty insane. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching.